everyone. My name is Monteiro, and I will be talking about product failures. First, I would like to thank our sponsors. I've personally been in product camp. I don't remember when, but I do have a T-shirt that says 2019, so maybe that's the first time I came here. I've been on and off. During COVID, there was a little bit of a stop, but it's been great for me. I've been a product manager for about 8 years. Prior to that, I've been in project management. So it's good to come here and talk to other people and learn about what they're doing. So these sponsors provide that. In some product camp, to be very candid, sometimes it wasn't that good, but when they break out the sections in rooms like they did this year, it's really good. So we should thank the sponsor for providing that opportunity to do this. So I love books. So I thought I'd made a collage of books to show, to talk about the stuff I've learned in product for the period I've been in this role. So what I did, I actually went to my Amazon and realized I've spent too much money in books. But one thing about it is to do a presentation, I thought, how can I present this in 30 minutes on what I've learned? And if you take what I've learned and put it into one slide, it's basically simply what's showing you there. You can actually find this by just Googling and search for Venn diagram on product management. So the reality is I start thinking to myself, what I have invested in all these books and what I've learned, I can just do it in one slide that shows this Venn diagram that anybody can Google it and find. But there was one book in that slide that I didn't include, which is this book here called Winning at New Products. This is a relatively older book. It's focused a lot on product development for hardware, so for all your software people. It doesn't talk about agile. It's a lot of waterfall, but still a very important book. And one of the things that this book presents that you don't see a lot in the other books is that it talks about the failures. So there's a chapter there that they describe what happens in products that fail and why they fail. So he has this quote there that talks about the literature out there that's not focusing on failure and why he focused this part of the book in that. So I really like this quote. I really like this book. I've read it a couple of times, to be honest. So to break down that product development categories that I share in that Venn diagram, I wanted to start at the one that's actually the easiest and the one that most people talk about, which is feasibility, which is the actual development of the product. And it's not, to me, it's not the most important one. I leave that for the end, but this is also very important. One of the things with feasibility is that a lot of people talk about processes. So I talked about waterfall. You hear a lot about agile and how people use agile to do product, and that is a process. But the reality is, and I've worked in many different organizations, and processes is different based on the organization culture. So some are under-processed. So I worked, actually the current company I worked started as a startup, so they were very under-processed. So everything was chaotic. Nobody knew who everybody was doing, right? But I also worked for large global organizations where they over-process. So everything is a process, and you can't do anything unless you follow the process. We also struggle a little bit, and this may be unique to hardware development, that at least in my career, I've struggled into this concept of using agile in hardware development. There's a couple of issues why there is an issue with that. One being that hardware, a lot of times you actually have to build a thing. So there's a supply chain in there, so it's hard to provide these sprints. But there's ways that, what I've learned is many times trying to implement agile, we kept failing. So I thought maybe it's not my understanding of agile. So I read more books, took more training, right? I start to feel like I do understand agile, but how come I can't really apply it to the product development process? One of the things, of course, is culture with the company. That's one. The other thing is just the nature of hardware development. So really what we end up, the learning from that exercise is to be able to be a ninja, right? Meaning that be flexible, right? and be able to make adjustments was needed. What I learned is that at the beginning of the process, before you make investments in tooling that goes into the supply chain, you can apply to understand customer needs, understand the products better, and that's the piece where we've adopted, and it's been somewhat successful. The other thing in feasibility, that comes up a lot, and before I became a product manager, I was a project manager. Love the project management role, but I always get people, see, you're a project manager, first question they ask you, what's the schedule? When is the due date, right? But what I've learned as a project manager is to talk about the risk. A lot of people talk about the timeline, but the timeline is really a function of how many risks you have to commit. So people don't communicate those risks. So there's false expectations established early because those risks are not well understood by the executive. So they talk about a timeline, just make sure you give an answer that's vague to focus on what are the risks we have to face to get there. A lot of times you need to get their support. So you're basically trying to get them to level up between their ambition and your reality. So that's a really thing that is hard to do with executives. They're very ambitious. They have very big goals to achieve, but they don't want to hear the reality. So you have to learn to balance that. The other thing that I've learned that is quite effective is trying to get with the team and make sure the team fits the organization. One story I would say is when I started, and one of the companies I started was when I went to my first meeting with the team, there were 30 people on the call. 30 people on the call. What I had to figure out is who were the people that were actually contributors that were delivering what we needed for the product team to do. So we had to help separate that. Culturally, it was difficult, but eventually we discussed things that can help people understand why that was important. So basically, we divided, the team size matters. So if you take the team size, if you have 30 people on the call, some people are going to be quiet, they're not going to be able to contribute, others are going to be talking too much. So how you do that is you make the team small. When you make the team small, you tend to lose some of the stakeholders because they also want to be informed of the project. They also want to contribute to the project, but how do you manage that? So Amazon, Jeff Bezos has a concept that he brought up that's called two pizza team, meaning that the team size should be based on how many people that can eat two pizza. So that's what the concept comes from. I added this side wings because when you order pizza, at least I do, I always order that side wings with it. That to me is what you need to make sure that you have this team, you guys meet, you have this team meeting, but you also need to make sure stakeholders get updated. So what I've done is separate the team meetings from the stakeholder meeting. One is just an update of the status. The other one is actually execution, working on finding solutions to the problems. The second bullet, or the second category that is important to realize, not the most important, but the second most important is viability. And what that is at the end of the day, we're in the business to make money, right? It makes no sense to go and develop a product and you don't make money. That's actually the start of failure, is not being able to deliver your business case that you were planned to deliver. Part that starts that helps define that is making sure you have a product vision and a strategy that is cohesive, that everybody agrees. The challenge with that is that it takes a lot of courage because you have to make some very hard choice, right? I don't know in software how many the horizon when people develop product, but I'm talking about 5 years. So when I look at a product strategy and a vision for the product, I'm thinking 5 to 10 years from now. So you can't really predict the future. But you have to predict the future so you can have that vision of where you're taking the product to. And a lot of people talk about roadmaps. The reality is, if you don't have this product vision, your roadmap means nothing. It's just a list of things you would like to do. Might as well just make it a to-do list. A real product roadmap comes first. What comes first to the product roadmap is the product vision and strategy. A lot of the visions that are developed are wishful thinking. One of the things that I face is that we go discuss what we need to do, but everybody don't align on that vision, because a lot of times that vision may not necessarily be rosy, right? So I'll give you an example. One of the products I had is for parking lots. One of the things we're thinking ahead in parking lots is what's happening with cars, right? To develop products for parking lot, you need to know what's happening with cars. What's happening with cars right now? Autonomous, right? They're becoming autonomous. So really, you start thinking, do you really need a parking lot in the near future? So that has implications on the product you develop, right? When I presented this vision of the future, it's like it's not accepted because it seems negative. But you really need to apply some of the concepts that think like a futurist. They always think about the story. They basically build the future based on a full story of what's going on, good or bad. So not just to focus on the nice things. The other thing in viability is, of course, prioritization. And this is where the discussion of roadmap comes. One of the challenges in product managers or in products or anything is that you always have more ideas than resources. So how do you balance that, right? So you have to build business cases because you need to compare idea A versus idea B. And in order to do that, you have to figure out a way financially to help justify A versus B. And one of the things about business cases, similar to where we talk about over-processing and under-processing, is that you have some people that just want the basic, right? Just want to outline a couple of pinpoints that can tell you that this business case is good. It's mainly qualitative, if we could put it that way. Then you have the finance guy who, guess what they're going to want to do? They want a full detailed business case with all these different inputs, right? So you have to find the balance between that and make sure, don't complicate the decision making and have the details that allows you to make bets. So you got to make sure everybody understands these are bets we're making. We're substantiating that with some financial targets, but they're just that. They're just targets, right? And this allows you to start making quick decisions on what you need to kill. A lot of times we want to develop more and more products. The best time to kill the product is before you start investing dollars into it. So you make a list of ideas, you define the ones that you want to prioritize based on these thresholds from the business case, and then everything you say, we're killing. It's out of the picture right now. The other thing about viability is having organizational alignment. How many of you have been in the organization and Group A doesn't agree with Group B? There's always this debate, right? That's common, right? So what ends up happening a lot of time in organization, you have this moto. Do you guys know who moto is? Nobody watched Madagascar? You have kids. You've probably seen it. Yeah, so he's the hippo, right? You know what the hippo stands for? Highest paid person's opinion, right? So in most organizations, you have these hippos that have a certain vision of what they want to achieve, but you as a product manager, you have to bring them to reality. That reality is the data-driven decision-making. However, data decision-making is extremely hard because data, what is data? When you collect data and you try, I know a lot of you are talking about AI and there's all that story around predictive analytics, but the data is the past, right? So you have to balance between actually having data to make data-driven decision-making with some, I go back to the term, bets. You have to make bets in order to convince your hippo on your organization. So in order to do that, you have to be a customer advocate, right? So your story has to be backed up with data and it has to speak in the language of the customer, not in the language of the organization. The last one, which I think is the most important part, is desirability. And this is where most product managers fail, right? This is the hardest thing, at least for me. I've been in product for about 8 years. Actually, I've been in products for 20 years, 8 years in product management. And this is the thing that I'm trying to hone my skills in and get better and better. Number one, continuously discover. This is discovery of what the customer needs are. One thing I hate about innovation, that it's the word that if somebody in the room mentioned, I might throw something at those people, is the mousetrap discussion. Everybody said we need to build the best mousetrap. We need a mousetrap to catch the customer. I don't know if it's common in software, for I know some of you are in that role, but in product development, everybody wants the invention, right? And they feel that we need to get the R&D teams to go somewhere in a box and come up with the greatest mousetrap ever. So, but innovation, which is different from invention, right? So what they really want is invention. You can invent anything you want, but does it fit? This is that discussion about product market fit, right? You can invent the greatest thing since sliced bread, but if you don't have the market for that, it's not a successful product, right? So innovation is about matching those two, right? So in order for you to know what the left hand here will do with the right hand, you need to talk to customers. And it is Nahito, I'm sure you guys have heard this term before, nothing important happens in the office, right? So in product management, we're extremely busy. We got people pulling us from the development team, in my case, from supply chain, from manufacturing, and all these different internal organizations. I'm not spending time there with customers to be able to understand their needs in depth. And this is something that I've constantly tried to sell to my organization. We are a global company. For me to see the bulk of my customers, I have to travel globally. We have a lot of travel restrictions, so it doesn't allow me to get to know our customers in depth, right? So that's something that we constantly trying to get access to is the customer. And I think some of you were in the jobs to be done discussion. I have a bullet point about that. A lot of times we talk about customer wants. I like to separate that from customer jobs. The thing that we're trying to solve is the customer's trying to do something. Whether it's a want or a need, they're trying to do something. And that's what you need to find out to be able to find the right solution for that. The last one here for desirability is what is known as WTP, which stands for willingness to pay. And willingness to pay is when you developed a product, right? You did your discovery, you find your customer, and then the product doesn't sell. Why does the product doesn't sell? Right? What are the 4 P's of marketing? Does anyone know the 4 P's of marketing?
Product, price, place, promotion.
Okay, so let's say you solve the problem with product, but you don't solve, in this case, price, right? There could be placement as well, right? So your distribution doesn't work, right? You have to know those things. You got to connect those dots to be able to really make that product successful. The other thing that I constantly get as a product manager is this thing about feature performance. And everybody looks at the competitor and say, oh, they got XYZ bigger than us. Why don't we have that? And this competitor has Z better than us. Why don't we have that? So the tendency as an engineer, I started as an engineer, is to grab Z, grab X and Y, and put them together and make this product, right? And the reality is that that's the wrong measure. It's not about the performance. It's about looking at the underlying problem the customer is trying to solve. Because a lot of times, especially with B2B, customers are focused on ROI, right? Return on investment, right? So you have to understand that. The performance as long as the performance helps achieve that ROI, then you are able to be able to justify the product. How good is a product that fulfills an unmet need, but it brings you no money, right? So having to know what that customer is willing to pay allows you to decide whether this product is viable, right? The customer may desire the product, but it might not necessarily make the business case for you to have.
Probably not a need if they're willing to pay zero.
Yeah. Well, there's situations that customers have a need. It's just they're not willing to pay for it. I just exaggerate there on the zero thing, but you may present a solution to the customer and they're like, this looks great. How much it costs? And you say whatever it costs, and they're like, oh, I just want to pay $5 for that, and it doesn't meet your business case, so there's no willingness to pay the amount you think that makes the business viable. So just wanted to take a couple of takeaways from here. Number one, focus on the problems. Problems. I think we've heard a lot of, and I think that's the topic on many talks we had. There's the jobs to be done. There's another presentation I saw that was highlighting what is the problem. That's what we need to focus. The solution will come later in feasibility. Focus on problems. Understand the problems deeply. You also want to be able to ask questions, right? Ask questions, not just external to understand the customer needs, to understand the problems better, but to also internally to understand the whys of why you're doing things. So in viability, you want to make sure that your organization clearly understand what you're trying to solve and that we can make money out of this endeavor, right? So if we invest, you don't want to wait until we invest to decide, oh, shoot, we can't make money on this thing, right? And the last one, don't be afraid to kill the product. Don't be afraid to kill the product. If there's one thing you want to take out of this call, out of this presentation is be courageous to kill products. If they're not bringing success to the organization, kill the product. And I don't know if I'm a hip-hop head, so there's a couple of references there to rap music. So that's what, if you're wondering what the 99 and the 21 is coming from. So those are the guys that have music related to that. So that's it for my call. Is there any questions? Before I take the questions, just want to thank the sponsors.
And you guys have still got 5 minutes for Q&A.
Sure.
When you give the other rooms the 5-minute warning, I got a comment that they
Sure.
And your point about willing to kill the product. So I don't know if anyone's from Amazon in the room, but I've heard from a friend of mine who works for Amazon that they're really good at doing this. So I just didn't know. But yeah, they figure out a point that's not worth pursuing and they kill the product. But not many companies do it, I think.
Yeah.
From my experience.
Yeah, exactly. And that's I've actually, just a story, we've developed a product that we thought was, it goes back to the pricing willingness to pay, right? We thought it was the best product. It was innovative. We had all the necessary things to solve some of the customers. And just to be more specific, in distribution, you were basically stocking a bunch of different configurations of products. So we want to develop a product that we call one SKU that you put in distribution so the customer then can make the choice when they install the product on what features they really want, right? So I go back to the point of having to try to have all these features. The product had all these features, but guess what? It brings the cost, right? So the cost of the product was quite high. So we developed the product. We had a good concept. Before we made the investment, we had this discussion about pricing, right? Historically, we always try to, okay, we're not making the business case, let's increase the price, right? This time we had, no, the product to be successful, it has to be at this price. So if the product couldn't be successful when it hit that price, we had to kill the product. Believe you not, everybody's heart just dropped. Everybody's invested in the product. You have engineers that are working on this day and night, trying to make it successful, trying to hit a certain deadline. And then we go and we say, this is actually going to become garbage. It's hard. It's a hard decision to make, but it's the right decision. Till this day, I think that was the right decision.
I think killing products is really, really important. To your point, hopefully you'll kill them sooner than when the product's made, like you said on your slide, right? Kill early and often. When you join a company for the first time, look for those opportunities, because when you kill a product, especially if you have hardware involved, you free up a lot of inventory dollars. But more importantly, no one's got to support it, right? So you don't have to have someone on your support team that you got to call and it's got to be able to answer about this product that's 10 years old. You don't have the inventory issues. You don't have the marketing issues. Everything on the product marketing background, everything that's got to support that product has to be kept up in multiple languages around the world or whatever. All those expenses go away. Your engineer team doesn't have to, figure out how do you build it and test it. So you free up so many resources to do the new stuff. So first thing, like you're saying, right, get a vision, get some products lined up that you think are exciting, and then use that as the driver to say, listen, we'll have these resources if we just go fill in the blank. Yeah. And that helps people understand, okay, you know what, we got to go kill some things. So
that's for the layoffs.
What's that?
That's for the layoffs.
No.
Getting products in.
No. Okay, so there's two. He said, so the comment was that's when they have layoffs. Maybe, right? But if you make the case that we want to go in a certain direction, and we need, I don't know, 2 product marketing managers, a product manager, 4 engineers, or just whatever, you can say, listen, I can free up all those resources that are doing the other things now, and get them on this, right, then you've solved the problem with people saying, well, where are we going to find the engineers? Where are we going to find the so-and-so? So that's kind of comment A. Comment B, yeah, sometimes you kill products and people lose jobs. So as product managers, make sure you understand where your product is on the product life cycle, right? If you're in the laggard, cash cow, just recognize that and then decide what you're going to do about it. What's that?
Place yourself properly.
Place yourself properly. Exactly.
Yeah, good point about the layoffs, but I do agree with you. At the end of the day, I made the point, right? You always have more ideas than resources, right? You just got to shift your resources to the right? Even as a product manager, I spent all the things you described. I spent a lot of times doing that on products that we shouldn't even sell, or we're not profitable with those products. Right? So if we can free up the teams from those particular, I guess in software they call that technical debt, right? But in hardware, there's all the things you brought up, right? I have inventory in the factory, right? So what do we need to do with that inventory since we're going to take it out, right? That's going to become excessive and obsolete. It costs, it affects the bottom line. So we have to figure out that, right? Our operations, how do we free up the operations to have new products? They're familiar with the old products, so they get excited with old products, believe it or not, because they know how to work it. If you bring a new product, everything is new. They don't like it in the beginning until it becomes, you mentioned cash cow, until it becomes a star, and then everybody likes it. But in that beginning, manufacturing doesn't like new products. Any other questions or comments? Those are pretty good. Thank you, everyone.